Hello, New York City. This is New York City plan. This is the Burroughs book plan with the pamphleteers. It's also a world plan with New York City. We have to find the people of New York City to communicate. For example, in the Little Rap Guy and Friends, we have a high-rise tenement next to each other drawn with fictional New Yorkers, but they are real New Yorkers. They are real New Yorkers. In other words, they represent real New Yorkers, and they are a part of my audience. So are people at every location because a breaching method is upon every location. A criminal insidiousness delivery system method. Our founders left us to teach this to speak it right. For example, slavery. You can't teach about it correctly if you don't teach about the additionals with it. And so we had all these fights, or not me. Sep, Little Rap Guy, and Reeves, who are a part of a anti-archetypal criminal enterprise called the Black Pupils. And that didn't work, tried to stay, not and tried to show, catch, and did catch location areas and states of the cartoon value nature system. Criminally foreign influence, just like the real cartoon value nature system since semi-ancient times. The whole, everywhere, every location, area, and state where the human volume is tactically, criminally foreign influenced, manifest fact treatment nature. Doesn't matter if you're the richest person or the poorest, the most forsaken. You are using criminally foreign influence premises treatments. You have been entertaining uses of value syntactically that are tactically ulterior from that native system that is that native identity of simultaneous nature that is increasingly value. Increasingly, the value of what is simultaneous and exceptions in exception nature's value is being offensively and has been offensively prevented free speech. So everyone was, and that was sustained, and a breaching method replaced because it was sophistication before any of us. It was sophistication here with that crazy slavery entrenched before our founding parents were born, who had to hide their roles countering it. They had the real roles countering it too. They counter extort our other founding parents. See presidents / chief. There are proofs that the only way they could do it was with the help of the Native Americans. And that's the only thing that, in other words, we're supposed to, in sense, that and how the human species volume science is not the one being valued syntactically. And they are preventing, everyone's in collusion with through that. That's what's really most having further the overt criminal enterprises. The needs to counter, excuse me, I'm saying Ada Orange. And I have this tooth now missing. The needs to counter the real, excuse me. I got very, here I go. The needs to counter the real causes of negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures. I still have a piece. However, the needs to blame the real causes of negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures on other things, others are into ourselves. Negative value nature progressions. Negative value natures like criminal insidiousness natures, like criminal insidiousness itself. See, this is the answer /S. Revelations come from this with hyper evidential. If we don't counter the cause of that syntactically, that means we have to counter, we have to define a hyperarchetypal criminal enterprise. And that simultaneously defining countries A through Z as victim predators, but as predators as archetypal criminal enterprises. So we have two distinct identities of possession of hierarchical possession over the integrity of the natural hierarchy and order of the finite simultaneously, while it is the value of what is active and where and how arrays were and are painted to all sides with instances reception. See, the breaching method would have people go about their daily lives. It's not just when I say when we're going to note this, we're going to study this, because other was being studied. No, while people are being trained to study other, now they have a motivation to defend an excuse other than what's going to exploit that, and where and how people are going to have to pretend to the integrity for themselves and the identity for the identity of the ground locations they represent. So one of the things it is commonly and has been commonly since before our founding parents against every individual of the human identity of volume, it's an identity theft / fraud / slander method that separated us from this native system, that the ancient republic and that the campus's systems A through Z are criminally re-engineered version of, not yet liberated to their actual native function, using the hyper invisible, same way they use calculators, and types of calculators, in demonstration of the same thing between the types of calculators too. How and why? This volume science using what is hyper simultaneous, where and how it is relevant. Subject treatments by so you know that people fight about this and they call it blame racism. We're all going to counter racism. That can't be defended in the quality of fact human nature needed to counter. First of all, rolls with that with a whole bunch of the people at that high, the agencies from other countries that are black too. They put black and white so that it would be syntax stupid, entertained, and so everyone's going to try to fight for sensibilities and emotions and defend that. For example, leave out with simultaneous. Emotions are about with simultaneous. There's a function by them that is no longer functional because the simultaneous is prevented. If the simultaneous hadn't been prevented, the quality of fact human nature, where quality of fact human nature is pretended and believed to have been or be, then if they didn't, then we wouldn't have had negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures. There is what is actually recorded. Those are maintained outcomes. Even when they were blamed on the right things, the way how they're doing it, they're also blaming on other things other than themselves. These what they call crimes are being propagated. I mean, they're being self-cultivated for a method that propagated them, caused negative value nature progressions, acts like predicate acts, criminal assistance nature, criminally legalized. In other words, slavery is not natural. It can only be natural. Nature will demonstrate negative value nature, progressions, acts, and natures, and demonstration of a system other than its own, like that. With slavery, in other words, it's not what it wants. It will push that from here, lethal IDs, force-based nature transfer. See, the only reason we haven't discerned this is because it made a fake value nature system and made it about values, knowing that this syntactically that roles with that would increasingly self-value what nature is actually demonstrating and having demonstrated, blames on other things, others, and self, needed to hide from correlation nature's actually inherent active progressive meaning at each age of campus. See, so the tree of knowledge and good and evil, for example, is deciphered. They also knew that all locations, like with the Old Testament, for example, because they used the people who know the most about American history, for example, they've been measuring, maintaining for their own means and needs, and not knowing, and with physical delusions, where and how we were supposed to explain how our founding parents didn't want anything to do with slavery, north or south. They didn't have the strength; they had to hide their roles. They had syntax that they had to entertain, and had as a theater. That if they didn't entertain it, it would be sensed by the breaching method. They had countries individually grouped and together, already having been sustained possessions of the hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise. That which we must counter syntactically by being a quality of fact, keeping nature capable of countering it. And so that's what Sepp had to tell them. And it took them a lot of meetings, and they would fight Sepp and Reeves. Because now the whole species is counter-extorted too now. You see, like in ours isn't, but the whole species of the cartoon value nature system. See, we could counter-extort our own identities of sophistication and of non-sophistication, and force premises treatments, metaphysical treatments simultaneously with physical treatment, physics treatments, and identity treatments simultaneously, more sane and capable of bringing instantaneous reliefs for New York City. We didn't have to wait for the government to do it. We'd have to be on this, they already failed to think right, and they defend others. They keep getting themselves invested. Zone defense towards the camera. Someone else answers the phones. Databases, relationships since before computers. It was used to keep everyone differentially, criminally foreign influenced. Speaking through others. What's worse than speaking through others or who said this or that is roles with this, that. Is roles carrying out, because you know why? The breaching method effectively made and keeps people non-verbally, including especially the interbranch, their methods of hiding where they were used criminally foreign influence, where and how they're differentially criminally foreign influence with everyone else, kept needing to hide the same sequence shift, finite active progressive lives, roles with the identity theft, fraud, slander method, torture method, additional to slavery. So that's what Sepp convinced the people, or one of the people, and some of the people he got but every time they communicate, there's a lot of people in there at once. See how many people live in a building like that at once? So people go by that. In other words, while they set up the suburbs to cause negative value to progressions, acts, and agents, and for this identity theft / fraud / slander method, where people don't know anyone around them, and the appearance of other, it's with instances, offensive data reception, evidence reception, identity reception, racketeering worse than war crimes. So we're going to stay more finite, real, with truths and facts treatments, while simultaneously greater, more powerful than the branch of government individually grouped them together, because what they've entertained that we will not. And so now they're starting to understand how it's not Sepp's role. Sepp doesn't realize their roles with it. But I mean, they know the whole world's in trouble. The whole cartoon value nature system. And then, they're going to try to counter, we'll forget that. The point is, they represent real people in those buildings. And to get everyone on the same page, they're impersonal but personal. They're a tool /S. And this is what it's about. Forcing, counter-forcing, counter-tricking, having counter-tricked, and then they're persuading, counter-persuading, and having nature itself help demonstrate. In other words, that's how they. So this is a mimic of the real value nature system, the cartoon value nature system with Little Rap Guy and Friends. And I forgot what I was going to connect to. No, but remember about that part with the boroughs. So Little Rap Guy and Friends are going to convince them to believe, to pretend, as like our founders, to make a different plan, to pretend that they came together in a different way than they did. Because now they're all extorted and counter-extorted. This is exactly how what our founders had to do. The Native Americans had been divided from Native Americans, and that had been sustained. The colonists had already been divided from the colonists. That had been sustained. The countries that employed them over here as colonies had already been separated from the same education and divided from themselves. That had been saved. And then our founding parents with the secret plan had been divided from themselves, had to counter-extort the other founders. That was the identity of relationship the human volume had to itself. It has to itself. So don't forget when I say the insignificance of when I say when we learn English, language, it's about value as nature / nature as value. We're studying the identity of the hyper-simultaneous. It's as a volume. And simultaneously, the only way we could discern that is by studying its simultaneously its identity of relationship to itself. And the value of that, which are three different ways it is hyper invisible. As that which is the value of what is invisible but still discernible, such as the subject, such as the verb, such as their natures, its identity of their nature's identity of relationships to themselves, as the self being a semi-nature as negative value nature, or automatically positive, temporary positive. In other words, as criminal, temporary positive could be criminal insidious. There's no how like the member of a criminal enterprise, overt criminal enterprise, would make positive treatments and use truths for lies. Greetings again, earthling. Greetings, earthling. Greetings, Ron. We are in space. Imagine we are in space, floating in space. Have you received any additional information from? I don't know who on Eric Crest is. I'm gonna look that up. Which town is this from? Which state is this from? Ron. Excuse me. You see, the whole world could end, with between Russia and Ukraine, because no one knows how to speak syntactically, because all our countries have been entertaining natures of industries that have been criminally foreign influenced, specifically for their function and like where and how we are naturally functional actually. Is that a police officer? Ron. I'm gonna look it up. In other words, but there's switching names into Branch, Connecticut. They've been using criminally foreign influence readings of statutes since founding. That's evidence. So what I've been talking about on here, this video too, like in the Little Rap Guy and Friends cartoons, they're like their subject slash s is their theme is counter obfuscated. They're like the founding parents of America and of other countries. Other countries had to be founded this way too. They had to hide their roles because locations, areas, and states were so deeply criminally foreign influenced. Just like the countries that had employed those, like satellite nations, like our colonies, like the colonies in America had been employed by countries like England, who doesn't even remember English history correctly. And they remember it worse is like criminally re-engineered. There are proofs that the colon and the semicolon had originally been referred to as the victory and the semi-victory. There are proofs they made English and the other languages to be reinvented or like with new narratives. So the real history of algebra is manifest with the reception of language proper, and with the perception of the sciences proper. See how the predicate act is valued to law, while the predicate is simultaneously valued to English, with that word predicate being, valued to the English, and no value, but value. A predicate is a certain type of verb, is a main verb, and so now we also know that put an ing on a verb, you form a present participle. It becomes you could use it as a noun or as an adverb. I mean, as an adjective. You could do, depends how you want to use it. But in other words, now you could its identity of relationship to itself, the invisible verb, its nature is the subject. I have a feeling that predicate will make a comeback in our current times. Unfortunately, it scares me. So in other words, slavery is like steady predicate acts against humanity and rolls with it. And see, it was syntax oriented. They had witch trials simultaneously. Note how they never brought up the value of what witch trials were to contemplate, and what slavery is to contemplate simultaneously. That's evidence too. They separate subjects with physical delusions and with criminally foreign influence premises, treatments, and uses of integrities of sciences that have never been unabridged. And the Constitution is supposed to be unabridged. They left us to say get it unabridged. They left us to say get it, have it. Real justice must satisfy all appearances of real justice. And they left us Marbury versus Madison for that. And they left us to describe how the prosecutors and the courts would pretend things like people are trying to control conversations because they're trying to, their federal rules of evidence is crime methods. They are predicate acts, delivery system methods, roles with the overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and people's opinions A through Z. Per how this starts at locations and uses database relationships and further inter-sciences database, and how as victims, no one realizes. Predicate will be at least to reinstate slavery. You see, when they bring up slavery, they bring up the Civil War. They try to think, they came through different schools, A through Z, whoever's speaking at the podium. And what they did at schools A through Z was replace for their own motivations, natures, needs, and interests as victims, not realizing while the breaching method was making them replace it for its own motivations, needing them to have other motivations juxtaposed. The short words our founding parents left us to like this. See, but they left us to read that, so they write it too. Rolls with the breaching method. So they just measure and maintain. Roles blaming other things, others, ourselves for finite, active, progressive things that stay and become increasingly manifest in demonstration of the breaching method's roles through our own opinion natures, A through Z, as victim reactions. So when people have to have mandated law, has to have mandated. So this is how I record. There are proofs that maybe, so in other words, Janine Pirro's Facebook page and Judge Napolitano's Facebook page and Fox News's Facebook page and CNN's pages. They have a bunch of Facebook pages. See Fox News, CNN, and MSNBC. Their Facebook pages are involved with the agencies with criminally foreign influence readings of statutes that, and in other words, giving immunities from prosecutions to judges and prosecutors and police forms, and that are being and having been in collusion, criminally foreign influence. Because as victims too, though, that's why. But see, they're leaving out as victim predators and that in defenses of that. I don't know what shalom means. It's it means something good, I think. In Hebrew. See, all these languages share an identity the same way we share difference physical. So we can see what shares all identity, the simultaneous, the value of the simultaneous and of the hyper simultaneous. And if it's conjunction to itself, shows how we stay on its identity of volume. Its identity of volume is identity of relationship to itself and the value of that. Distinctly from value treatments here, relative to the slander method that has the religions themselves, because they're measured identity of ground locations just like people. And then they have a whole bunch of names tied to them. So this is a fact treatment nature thing like that. It keeps possessed. Everyone's speaking through others and then defending and hiding details with that. And that's all it needs. It was sophistication here, there, before everyone. Our founders were like this. Was the bite of 87 was a crisis. They're connected in some ways. It's a shame that keeps trying to separate, make differences. There's been proofs that Facebook. So Facebook has retired and standing people associated with them, with the development in the first place. And they came from campuses that taught them, okay, this is the database, these are the types of data, and these are memory locations. You're going to use this programming language, syntax language, no, and this is for functions. We're going to program this. The function of X is when it's this, it equals this. And they just go and like this, they go to different classes. And no one's watching. The reason they have it, okay, because we have to teach this and this guy. No one's watching how they could have had all this juxtaposed. And like, for example, logic. They have the sciences of bridge, they all identify the ground locations for the electrical engineering of our fact treatment nature, having been exploited how it bridge. It's a bridge because it's an engineering, just like how the lighting company works. Our fact treatment nature works for the breaching method, the proverbial devil / genie. Fred, there's kind of not sure with this science stuff. So there's like there are people who are experts in computers with the schools, and they deal with different police forms and military too. And see, in other words, and then and into branch. Everyone speaks with each other. That's another part where they, oh, they have like see across the company that when they're having the big lie, they use the big lie as a phrase against people interstates, and they're pretending it's only against Trump. So the House has been used criminally foreign influence since founding. So there are Wethersfield police who've been switching and forging names and making confessions. They over the phone too. They confirm before the police chief um, quit or was fired. His lawyer, his personal lawyer, is also involved with uses of corners of streets and of corners of buildings for identity thefts and frauds rules, and where they use the pretended legitimate right to lie where they don't have the right to lie. So former director of the FBI is roles also with people with upskirt and digital crimes with girls and drugs and medicine and against boys and girls sickly distinctly per a method that he uses that. Is it Facebook so Facebook has their own police. When we have differences with ourselves, they say, "Oh, that's hate speech," but they sequence shift. They don't do it honestly. Then they take people. Then they say them when in other words, people. There's an Enzo Fienza, and I forgot his cousin's name. I don't know them, and they're involved with some police women, or women involved with the police with them, and intercities, and with some mayors, and with some judges and people on off the state judicial branch officers. And so what they did was have through myself as a kid, they've been making people make confessions to me all at once. Then they pretend to know me, as roles with a whole bunch of different instances that brought up some child abuses and how they forced that and stuff like that. There was other natures of things that we're doing with the kids, and with the courts involved with it, and how differentially criminally foreign influence with areas of overt criminal enterprises and private ones. How Facebook sounds Martin Luther King. Who is Joe and Candace? Jump Adams, two cousins, you say? There are two. There's a Joe DeMore from Rocky Hill. There's a Joe DeMore from Wethersfield. Joe DeMore from Rocky Hill and Joe DeMore and has a brother named Tony DeMore. And the Joe DeMore from Wethersfield confessed and recorded at the corner of Town Line Drive and demonstrated at the corner of Town Line Drive and Rocky Hill and Wethersfield. Town Line Drive and South Dean Highway. They have roles with some of the people the police brought up in their confessions about with them, with other police. So there were kids, so they had roles abusing little girls and things like that, and pretending that me and other people to fake locations, fake ties to themselves, fake natures of ties to themselves, and then spreading lies to teachers and putting things in databases. Now these are courts that were making arrests of kids where the people that were having things stolen from them and the people stealing from them were in collusion against the people getting charged with the arrest. And they were using that as identity thefts and background. They've been doing all kinds of things like that on every campus. I call it that. They have different last names, but they're the same family. Something doesn't. They're cousins. Joe DeMore. Then there's a Joe DeMore with a John DeMore brother and a Paul DeMore. I never communicated, never anything to do with the Paul DeMore. One time I had communications over the phone. He said his brother's involved with he confirmed his brother's involved with Wethersfield police. And so, in other words, years ago he was involved with wire crimes with them. And with some people involved with state police, there was There are people on Facebook who also said that Mike Roberts is involved. See, Mike Roberts was involved with them too, with all these people, with the police, with on my street that made confessions when I was a little kid about how they're differentially criminally foreign influenced, increasingly though, and how that's used remotely. The executive branch kids and their family members and other men and women that I didn't know the names of, and some of them I got. And what's FNAF, Ron? So Facebook, then the interbranch, the Facebook page of New Britain Superior Court also has their Facebook page involved with rape threats, and with the Facebook page of the principal child abuser when that was one of the things that were forced to do. Other natures of organized crime and natures of child abuse on and off that campus, intercities connected. At the time and further, untimely death roll. There's a Rob Rodriguez. So there's a family that used to answer the phones for the police named Smith. There's one of these Smith family, a bunch of Smith family. There's Jamie Smith and David Smith, and their mother has roles with some guy who's involved with his doctors and judges, with some untimely deaths, with a Rob Rodriguez, and with some Scalora families. These are also people with the DeMarles on off the World Trade Center, families that work for the World Trade Center investigators, also associated with Washington, D.C., and with the 2006 district court case involved with a whole bunch of people, like with the police. I caught with the child abusers, like the two Mendez police, fabricating police reports, roles with identity thefts and frauds, with these others, a whole bunch of people on off Central Connecticut State University in New Britain involved with identity thefts and frauds, with complete strangers like a Joshua Julian and others associated with forensics locations and associated with body dumping spots involved with identity thefts and frauds increasingly, and falsified police reports through time rolls, and people with confessions and recorded crimes with courts that were used remotely leading up to the World Trade Center attack, and even for depositions. They've been planting evidences, fake things into databases and at locations, and then hiding that with all that comes before them, unrelated cases and instances. The World Trade Center, my Uncle Nick Gers. What is FNAF? It was proven that there was post-dated documents had been presented to the Ninth Circuit Court next door to the World Trade Center towers right before the attack. They had been post-dated from inside the court to appear as if they'd been time-stamped late. But then it was proven that they had been brought to the court and time-stamped timely, and they had been post-dated to appear late to the panel of judges from inside the court. That proven led to a 2006, that was right before the World Trade Center attack in the Ninth Circuit Court, which is in Manhattan, right next to the World Trade Centers. And so we came home and then found out that the World Trade Center got attacked. Came home from New York. Now we're in Connecticut. Now, 6 months later, that was proven about the post-dated documents. And there was a district court case in Connecticut with former director of the FBI. 3 of his co-defendants and a whole bunch of other different proven federal criminals from other kinds of cases. Before that, they've been spreading lies and using like how their election laws where you could lie about the other people. But they were getting away with exploiting exceptions the same way they've been doing with Facebook. And they were telling lies at a union hall with people that were involved with overt criminal enterprises in a whole bunch of different countries, involved with using corners to pretend and then make an instance and pretend they know me, making confessions and like involved with this, and involved with violence identity and people not in my grade, like older than me and stuff. Didn't pertain older was because all these people have ties to the people that were in the 2006 district court case. They have roles with predicate acts and other natures of cases, and they have roles with investigations, investigators that haven't been used remotely. Who died in the Tower of Babel. I don't know, but it really is serious. That because they also, the Connecticut News attached me and others to fake conversations with them and others about that. And they attached little kids and myself to fake ties to doctors as a kid and as an adult. And they made three, in other words, interstates, there are police who are also doctors of psychiatry and psychology who still have physical delusions and criminally foreign influence premises treatment and criminally foreign influence uses of data stacking and natures of identity thefts and frauds rules. Fake conversations with ourselves and little kids stacked into databases. Their personal ties with various natures of courts personally, criminally involved with them. And now, see, this is recorded. They were pretending other and hiding this from Judge Janine Perro and Judge Napolitano. Fox News, no, but not just Fox News. So, yeah, they put me to fake words. They were fake communications with them too. And my family, they did that too. They also lied about the outcome of cases, attaching my mother to fake pleading in those cases. My mother, my father won an NLRB case. And then, in other words, they tied me into fake conference. My father had a case that was ongoing tied to that, a racketeering influence of corrupt organization act case where that was pro se litigant brought from as a union dispute. But it also has roles with, their roles with predicate acts against me and little kids. And their roles with their co-defendants and all other natures of federal criminals on off campuses I went to, and connections between those identity thefts and frauds instances they hadn't have roles with. A whole bunch of different falsified police reports through time, and they keep switching and forging names at the branch. So I haven't been having anything to respond to. Judge Judy assigned autonomous ankle braces to arrest suspicious Miss Andres Anderson. Ryan, I think we're going to watch me on Facebook now since I watched your truth bombing, as the kids say to me, and I was just wondering what you think of the contradictions in my Windows truck with a vanilla. I don't know why I am not going to be hard to separate because so anyway, many pray. This is one when we get people from New York City, we're gonna make YouTube ground videos. And this is how we're gonna counter. We're gonna counter where and how they've been replacing our short words and revelations with their physical delusions and criminally foreign influence premises treatments at all campuses. So they've been bringing in attacks on themselves at the schools so they can replace what's actually recorded with audio, with fabricated audio and video mixed with that, When people go to courts, like Superior Courts all day, all the streams in there every day. When they've been going to the courts every day, they're not speaking. And when they speak, they're leaving out, they're not letting them speak for use exception nature properly. And they have with delusions, like regarding control, what people can control and or not. So they've been preventing mandated law at all locations further and further. They've been pretending not to realize that one of the ways they've been getting away with it has been self-valuing criminally foreign information stuck into databases and spoken by people. So if you call 911, they could just replace your audio and video with fabricated audio and video and play stupid in backgrounds, and you won't even realize that's there. They've been doing this against little kids. They've been doing this with public schools and private schools in a way that keeps them in collusion. So I'm not a police firm, not criminal, not a lawyer. Lawyers with the interbranch, they're recorded criminally foreign influence originally. Still, that's evidence. We could use that. We have to use what's hyper evidential. Little Rap Guy and friends are going to teach everybody how to think, specifically regarding this one subject. We're going to do it the proper fact checking. We're going to counter slavery, which requires not leaving out the simultaneous torture, slander, identity theft, fraud, and the method by those 5 parts bound, which are also conjunctive to where and how there are like 5 identities of criminal insidiousness nature. For example, see, everybody came through campuses that replaced other and measured other not realized being and haven't been replaced. And it had roles with all kinds of other instances and things like that. And with all those time impositions of things like that, everyone missed how the subjects are being and having been self-valued increasingly abridged as identity ground, conjunctions to our identity of electrical engineering as the species volume science as it is relative to what is hyper simultaneous. In other words, the people with physics left out metaphysics and identity. And when they didn't, they have physical delusions regarding such. They had criminally foreign. That was an identity theft, fraud, slander method overtly / insidiously against colonists A through Z, against Native Americans. They told me not to drink when pregnant, buddy. So, how are you saying your girl? I don't know. Sure hope I get to come on campus this year. What do you study, Ron? Campus is horrible now because the environment of all Native Americans after the Campus Marcius is what they used to call the ancient campus. And there are other definitions that have these things. So this is the model the world follows. The world shares our students here and there. But now through identities tactically altered from the one that we are naturally. Again, slavery is not natural, but as criminal insidiousness. So this teaches us about that identity, that the predicate of English and the predicate act of law share simultaneously. We native pure must perceive, discern. Vaccine, that sounds like vaccine, Ron. Campus Marcius. So, in other words, people from Central Connecticut State University also came up to me. I didn't respond. And they confessed demonstrated involvements with one of the DeMoros. And there are girls that they abused when they were kids, but there were also teachers involved with it. One's involved with the computers. One's involved with the English class I had. These are also people involved with like speech pathologists and doctors of such who are involved with drugs and medicines, crimes with kids, identity thefts and frauds with their patients and criminals, and with uses of campuses, and with physical delusions simultaneously, various natures of courts. So we have to get them onto paper. So they've been using criminally foreign influence readings of statutes, for example, going after the President Trump. They kicked him off Twitter. The same people that are roles with these agencies with the upskirts, and there's an upskirt nature picture sent to me by one of the police and by like associated with Ian. If that's the Ian up the street, FBI or not, he's also recorded with the FBI. And his neighbors involved with identity thefts and frauds with state police, DMV, DOT, involved with identity thefts and frauds. In the way back, went out of their way to act, to pretend to know me. As their roles with this, with a whole bunch of with the transition from ACA to RICO, there were a whole bunch of overt criminal enterprises, other countries, and natures of federal criminals, and uses of job sites and of union halls that were identity thefts and frauds and slanted roles also with mayors and executive police and things on off campuses, stacking fake things in the databases, putting people next, making instances that they could pretend were other and other kinds of things, putting fake things in databases. No, I can't believe they kicked the president off Twitter. I don't know if it's real or what, but it is tied to, it is real that it is tied, recorded to people associated with former director of the FBI and various federal criminals tied to him. There are also ones involved with the principal child abusers campus since before he got caught, and he was caught off campus anyway with upskirt type stuff with his phone, trying to take pictures of little girls in a Walmart in Hartford. Reportedly, he's in jail for that now. See, we can clean the waters, we can have them purified, we can control everything, we can afford to do this. Only if we all agree syntactically to counter the hyper criminal insidiousness cause increasingly being demonstrated to us by nature of all ground locations having been tactically denatured. It's not just this species going extinct, save the species, fix the identity of the ground's identity in relation to itself, and we'll have the species saved. A place where they can teach child abuse. How do I sound? What do you think of child abuse? See, they don't let people report it. The whole time they weren't letting those girls report it per them, if they made up or what, because the news makes things up. And so, in other words, they were used criminally for influence, and relative to what I caught them doing at the child campuses, where they a whole bunch of different motivations, natures, needs, interests, need to pretend that American history is complicated. All I have to do is understand criminal insidiousness. Slavery was caused by criminal insidiousness. It was standing as it rolls with the torture method, and it was applied against our founding parents too. It was an identity theft, fraud, slander method, torture method, sickly distinctly against everyone. So, in other words, others being and haven't been taught. And they can't defend their justifications of that. So offensively, they've been using CRT, which has theory part of that phrase, to leave out how they've been using theory criminally. And then they pretend you're talking about CRT because that's what they've been repeating in the news. These are multi-front affronts to mandated law. While they're screening it having been prevented, they are preventing it as weapons and the tools of the breaching method. Everybody. So everyone needs and wants to figure things out. See, everyone wants to figure things out. Like, so in other words, about slavery, this is how to figure it out. And so Obama, being a great man, helped me figure this out. No, in other words, I'm not smarter than Obama. I'm not smarter than Trump. I'm not smarter than Biden. But with my subject, I am. What I paid attention to, what I was shown, because I followed this since I was a kid. The ties between the people with the lie progressions and the identity theft, fraud, slander. See everyone relevant to where and how. People that pretend to be care for America offensively were preventing American history from being told. Relevant to uses of that. All I have to do is know that we have strength now, but we're still not fixing all the damages to the ground, to the Native American system needs for it. And black people, their rights are distinctly forbidden, forsaken. And the cause of it are blamed on other things other than themselves. And we're not being allowed to speak about that. We're not being allowed to speak about the value about that of people offensively pretending they have integrity. It's amazing. Because that's what they put in the law. They put black in the law, and they still saying it. That's what MSNBC, Fox News, and CNN are offensively roles. I can't communicate with them on Facebook. They don't respect Facebook, but then they use it and right respect it. In other words, they've been using it for evidence as crimes. They have a crime methods that exploit and value where they measure and maintain how there are streams going before courts each day. And so they are backed up. They don't have time for equality of fact, cheap nature, because they never were shown to. All those streams and people in bad instances had collusion with those locations, had collusion with uses of those locations already. Uses of those predators since they were kids. New York City was really the problem. No sane person talked about American history yet. And all exceptions is with people using, lies and using research. Oh, where's your research? That's what's recorded. Everyone knows that's what's recorded. It's hyper evidential. Everyone knows that any colonist would A through Z would walk into the court and they're going to have the wrong outcome if they want to use equality of fact. You make short words properly. So that's why I use Stephen. That's why I use the term black. Because in other words, this is how that's what we have to. That's the subject. They have in the news. They're blaming on other things, others, or selves. Why? And they're denying where and how slavery, torture, identity theft, frauds, and slanders are against people of New York City, distinctly. Now, that's not just black people. It's logistical impositions. But that's what they're hiding behind. That's what they're not mentioning while they're speaking for black. Because why would they be speaking for black still too? Leaving that out and leaving out how black agencies were roles with that, with these tricks, with the fake law, fake integrity of mental health experts, logic experts, delusions rock, criminally foreign influence, fact cheating natures as criminal insidiousness. They've never had the right to be legalized. See, but no one understood this because no one had this taught right. Vaccine brings back. In New York City, so we have cities throughout the country. They are manifest reactions to the breaching method distinctly hurts all locations. Had slavery entrenched north and south. New York City had all kinds of rules with slavery. That's what built that foundation like that, pretending that's fathomable. It was enslaved. It would have made it even more unsafe and more fake theater stewards of it. If our founders didn't have Native Americans to help them become a country, still fake, telling us to get the Constitution on the bridge. That means at locations. That means they shouldn't have done what they did and are doing and exploiting having done per their uses of their Facebook pages into Branch and the stewards of Facebook and the other online platforms. There are people involved with drugs and medicines, crimes with kids that are also making comments pretending to be against that with like a red claw, I believe on YouTube too, with psychedelics. They have rules with men and women that were selling psychedelics when they were kids and they were selling them when they were kids. And then they were pretending I was doing it. They're bringing sequence. These are the ones involved wire crimes with the Wethersfield police and the families answer the phones for them, retired and standing. There's a Phil Cololo involved with falsified police reports and with the principal child abusers campus. A whole bunch of people involved with forensics locations with him and with the FBI, with some see, they don't really care about the see, I think marriage should be for a man and woman. And they don't care about gay rights. They care about it so they could pretend people are phobic and you know they have psychology pretend people have phobias. They fabricate audio and video fake ties to people, identity thefts and frauds. You know, so they'll have those kids like with sexual dysfunctions in classrooms, or if people are being rude to them for that, it's because someone's not following the law there. They're not following the rules. Then when they do step in, they're pretending, you know, they're sequence shifting. They don't care about. They have overt criminal enterprises with our camp with the kids, even if those are having to deal with where and how they have all those other countries, the ones that are involved with the overt criminal enterprises, like on the suburban schools and on the Hartford schools. Same ones. In other words, all these wire crime methods, even the corners of the streets, people involved with corner streets involved with wire crime methods back in the day that have connections. People tied to UPS and shipping. They use those the identities where there are types of identities of the law and foreign that are criminally foreign influence. UPS has people involved with the Oliveri family. UPS people before I went to work there, and before I went to work at another place in Oliveri worked. His friends recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed that place is involved with the O'Brien family and with the former Mary Gold with them. A place at the corner of Southstein Highway and Wells Road. It's also places near right where George Washington had to come leave slavery in Trenton, Wethersfield, Connecticut, and in the north here, in Connecticut, between New York and Boston. So they have white KKK and Confederate flag themed families and friends and cliques involved with identity thefts, frauds, attaching me and others to fake locations and on off campuses behind our backs. So there's no way to respond. And nonverbal confirmations like the next day, where people are making confessions on and off campuses, like Dean Alford or someone pretending to be the Dean Alford is involved with or someone switching his name anyway on Facebook is involved with a Joshua Stryker and with this Eric Oliveri and people from UPS recorded, demonstrated, confirmed a whole bunch of ways it's true. Through time, the rolls on and off the state judicial branch offices all along Route 3 and at the corner of Route 3 and Elm Street with people I caught the Wethersfield police with wire crimes and child abuses and rolls with untimely deaths that brought this up. Also with identity thefts and frauds, clicks from behind my back through time. Also, as people involved criminally leading up to and in cases, including with the former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin. Also involved with falsified police reports against me, with people with involved with evidences in their cases criminally, and with my name used criminally, and with me pretended with fake. They pretended I had fake conversations about my father's cases with doctors and people that went to schools with their kids, like a Leahy family. Pretending he had conversations with me about police equipment too. I never had a conversation with anybody about police equipment in my life. And that's not, I never said that to the Delafair family that made the confessions about their roles with, I forgot to tell my father that too, with a cigarette box that they were selling cigarette boxes or whatever for people to use to make phone calls for free with a probate court judge's family. Involved a whole bunch of different natures of drugs, medicines, crimes, identity theft, frauds, slanders, time and types, instances, roles, falsified police reports, roles, on and off campuses, connected through time behind people's backs. Their roles with, houses near Town Line Drive, near that shopping center, and their roles with the policing of the shopping centers. So the roles with that, no, fire departments too involved with wire crimes with them. In other words, they're also involved with the Joshua Julian, who was also spreading lies with those proven and further federal criminals, and use people involved with remote uses of where a whole bunch of other countries, overt criminal enterprises, and sick people and people tied to body dumping spots and killers, and people who are fighting with the killers, and the people next to the body dumping spots all have ties to connected identity theft instances, fraud through time. That makes them, and then it makes a big array of people that don't know me and will say that they only know me where they were influenced to plant evidences, including as fact-cheating nature evidences, and they even verified online. So there are people with Connecticut boxing gyms involved with these families from my town, involved with identity thefts and frauds against me, behind my back. I never see them in front of those people. And, I can't complain about it to them because the judges and prosecutors have already used them criminally. People that get scared and already invested themselves speaking in relationship to the roles with the people who got shot and the people who were involved with that. Even like, in other words, body dumping spot of Billy Grosso, body dumping spot of a serial killer, people next to it, recorded involved with predicate acts with people on and off the state judicial branch offices through time. Same people involved on off to our highway where it runs into Hangdog Lane, the Borough Turnpike, before the heart of Hartford. Same people involved at those three spots at the end of the Borough Turnpike with identity theft, fraud, slanders against me, also has their roles with falsified police reports and with the names involved with the people that stole stuff and from other people, and the people who got the stuff stolen from, who were involved with predicate acts with the judges and with the people who stole it from them. They're putting fakes out. They're involved with the identity theft frauds even to that extent, and the people that run the prisons of each age. I didn't go child prison, but there were people that ran child prisons and stuff like that, involved with the people involved with identity thefts and frauds that way. So there's a 1989 Reader's Digest article about people, these presidents, they have people that work for them, where locations, areas, and state. There are also people from Rhode Island associated with the on off the state judicial branch offices, and with Navy, and with with other military that are criminally foreign influenced families, with foreign military like Kuwait military, involved also with deans and people involved with the intelligence community with Native Americans, with this Joshua Stryker, former director of the FBI, Robert Lusk, involved with predicate acts on campuses I went to in cases as their roles, criminally foreign influence uses of the locations of depositions and courts where their family members were also involved with these narratives. And foreign and domestic military. Eric Burgess is one of the people that recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed before he brought the dean's son into it too. In other words, he already knew he was telling lies to his girlfriend from Hartford Courts, who's also involved with their various natures of federal crimes with kids and being child abusers, identity theft, fraud, falsified police reports, and roles with the switching and forging names. And those courts involved with the depositions of former director of the FBI and his co-defendants, three of them as men and women in their family, involved also, one of them with a daughter that went to my school, at least one of my schools. I never had a class with her, never saw her around campus. I saw her one time. They tried to make an exception to pretend I knew I never word or conversation with her. It's involved with another girl that Heather Hanson's one of the ones that former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, non-verbally confirmed. Whether he denies it or not, it's recorded his roles with it and them with, abuses of Heather Hanson and with the daughter of Dawn LaConch, is the daughter of John LaConch, and Thaddeus Grabowski involved on Fox Connecticut News in Hartford, Connecticut, with two Mendez police and to a Domain police family, Adam Domain and Mike Domain. I never had a conversation with Adam Domain in my life. They're also involved with people that live next to schools I went to, involved with identity thefts and frauds with their family members and abuses of girls, but they like it where they're going to be involved with identity thefts and frauds, and with there are a whole bunch of different guys that were lying to them, abusing them in other contexts. Then they made them need to hide lie progressions. They need them relying upon illusions that their boyfriends told them that the boyfriends that shared them told them individually grouped and together the fake identity thefts and frauds with the men and women interbranch associated with that leaderships of the campuses, and then further private police and their roles with syntax tied to Washington, D.C. and Washington and then World Trade Center. So, in other words, we're going to bring a quality of fact-sheeping nature that doesn't leave out those 5 parts of American history, the breaching method. We're going to draw it in relationship to those 5 parts that we hold up simultaneously as the subject of the. How do you deal with the simultaneous? Well, you draw with simultaneous. So with slavery, torture, identity theft, identity fraud, slander. Now, how are we going to counter what's the source of this, the breaching method? First, we have to discern the breaching method. We have to counter. We're going to say we're going to counter this. Watch out, we tell nations, as nations, so we don't get them to blast us out of the, you know what I'm saying? But in other words, there's a 1989 Reader's Digest article by Eugene Methvin. So the Clinton administration was given, just like the other administrations, there were criminally foreign influenced helpers and roles with furthering that, because that's all they are capable of doing. They had their short words and revelations and how to use what is hyper evidential replaced with criminally foreign influenced fact-sheeping nature aspects and qualities and physical delusions simultaneously. So there are natures that require writing to be countered, because the sensibilities of those standing are incapable of defending themselves in affording writing though. So they have to pretend other increasingly self-valuing sequences, increasingly self-valuing this being having been at all locations, areas, and states. Vaccines. So, in other words, that's all fake. Those they have the names uses, and no one can speak for women or men correctly, sickly, or them grouped properly, or they just attach us to fake words, and they get away with it by all the fake things in databases, and they get away with that too by pretending to be against behavior they see online, and that is forced with where and how they recorded themselves, forcing fake care and simultaneously forcing aggression and violence and identity thefts and frauds and slanders, not just against me, but against everyone grouped and together too. And they are keeping everyone using the groups to hurt everyone else because no one individual has power. So everyone's reaching for the group to hurt everyone. The group difference, fake difference. So why I use black? Because everyone's told us to use black, and the country did, and that's another evidence because we put it into the simultaneous those 5 parts. That goes with the torture, slavery, identity theft, fraud, slander method. Not me. I'm not the one who wrote the law. And if someone, and there are plenty of people who are prejudiced against and will call me white. So we shouldn't be fighting or be sensitive about things like that. The news is pretending other because they have to pretend they don't realize what they have been involved with, which is preventing reliefs for the people of Hartford, Connecticut, the people of, let alone the people of New York City, the people, for the people of Wethersfield, Connecticut, let alone the people of Hartford, let alone the people of New York City, suburbs across the country, let alone the Hartford, Connecticut, cities across the country. Hartford, the heartbeat. So as a plan, we open up all these space locations. It's like nothing to open up thousands of space locations. Nice. People could go into it and it would be like nothing. Give them nice food. People would do it for free. Company even make money to go. People who pay money who go there to do it. Make money to give people a place temporary. Or make a circuit. We change the nature. So if we do this in our countries at the same time, now all of a sudden, now all the streets, the locations, all the if they're undercover police, they can't speak for the law. Breaching, we put other things. We keep all locations, every state safe that way. Don't have all these homeless people because they'll be on a circuit. No, you can't have right to assembly. Where are you going to go? Right to assembly. There's no spot for right to assembly in a suburb across the country, not by accident. They measured what our founders left us to defend and made us self-value, made roles A through Z self-valuing. Blaming other things others themselves. Why, how that was not, and pretending other for it, screening it, cloaking. So, New York City people, hear me, gather here, please learn. All you have to do is say, okay, I want to do it. We're going to do it. We're going to be the people that are counter-extorting, the people, we're counter-extorting to liberate them. The people in that tenement. Now there are mostly black people in that tenement. But there are white people, there are people from other countries. And all these countries, Spanish people, they have rules with slavery too. And they have rules with being Native American too, though. So, it's not physical difference. Physical difference is to discern the invisible or hyper invisible being enabled or exploited. or forsaken and exploited. Yeah. So in other words, if anyone tries to deny that black people then or now, I'm not forgiving the ones that were involved with it, fact cheating nature oriented ways. It's got nothing to do with the black. These are logistical impositions. But with these logistical impositions, we're not going to. In other words, that's one of the best evidences that the breaching method was existent that it used. We're not going to deny that. We're going to evaluate as to use it for that relative to those 5 things we're going to encounter simultaneously. Slavery, torture that went simultaneously with it. Identity theft, fraud, slander that went simultaneously with it. Specifically, so we would call this wants people to say, oh, the Justice Department is corrupt. Of course, the Justice Department is corrupt. Don't understate it, though. It is worse than and more finite than that. Well, it is complete possession over the Justice Department's integrity. Nah, Maxine, it's hot. So they've been using Facebook. They've been using reactions and reaction nature of people at each age sickly distinctly. So further, there are foreign and domestic medical families and judges involved sickly distinctly with the locations and families next to child schools and next to the South Steam Middle School, for example, in Wethersfield, Connecticut. Criminally foreign influence, delusions raw, predators. Now that note how middle schools, most of them are only 2 years long. This is also relative to the identity theft, fraud, slander method that uses quick instances and methods that are bound. So, in other words, the post office is near there too, involved with this. And with the houses they involved at the corners, everyone uses other people's names. More important than who's saying what about who is who's entertaining that, because these are roles where the interbranch non-verbally confirm what is also recorded, so we don't even have to ask the other people and know it's true. So they have everyone needing to pretend that people can't tell. I don't even have to ask them interbranch. Plus, they put it in the news. They put me and people fake words with each other. They pretended my motivations, pretended lies about their motivations, including about how they care for their kids. They're using their kids to hide their actually recorded natures. They don't really care for their kids. Using all exception nature and demonstration of the same thing. We don't have any stewardship worthy of us. America, New York City. They need us to blame Esquires. They need us to blame wealth leaving out hundreds of nations here and there. Shared. Semi-ancient trap self-valued roles with it. Only capable nature of demonstrating more criminal and seditious natures of positive and negative treatment identities of criminal and seditious nature of one body, species, volume. It's science gone. Like sings a song. So how do you guys find Lucas? How you doing, Lucas? So we're going to free New York City and the world by being a quality of fact, cheaping nature capable of countering the criminal insidiousness / hyper criminal insidiousness, if you will, that had been propagated by the breaching method, the predicate acts delivery system method, the criminal insidiousness delivery system method, that the founders of not just America, not just of the countries that were forced to colonize us because they were being used remotely. Countries A through Z are in a semi-ancient trap. So all must wrap as species body in all at once. And calling campus dunce with stolen name. So the borough's book will be ordered through the brought to organization, brought to ourselves too, brought to the state where we could be a New York body, be a Hartford body, be a Wethersfield body that can work as the species body, as distinct, non-distinct, simultaneous, hyper simultaneous, sequence / simultaneous natures. And the Hartford's heart will pump and pull and push, and pull and flow. Flow. In other words, and we'll just get better and better and better making positive value nature progressions, acts, and natures. It means out of nowhere, including especially because we're and how we are fact keeping nature. Evolution is gifts, fruits, and gifts. It should only feel like games. All exception nature should be a demonstration of the same thing. It is no game, evolution science. Science uses scientific process, which would have revealed these answers long ago had we been using it. But how it is not used and others pretended, that screened it too. So there are a bunch of mental health doctors that are recorded involved with abuses of the location sickly distinctly and involved with remote uses of the sense and sensibilities of the fact-keeping nature and the identity of the black kids of the leaderships and of the black and white women judges, for example, used remotely in the Britain Superior Court, involved with the principal sex offenders campus in Wethersfield, intercities, involved with predicate acts on and off Central Connecticut State University in the Britain, involved with predicate acts on and off Trinity College in Hartford, with people on and off Route 3, on and off Elm Street, where it runs into Route 3 in that corner, on both sides, with a whole bunch of people with my town's police chief, his lawyer, involved with a bunch of people I caught with wire crimes with them and with the child abusers. When a bunch of people using the name Sullivan said that a guy using the name Sullivan and a Wethersfield police officer and another guy said that they're switching names. Other officers too. A bunch of officers have been switching names and falsifying police reports so that, and leaving nothing in writing to respond to by doing such. They have all kind of crime methods. And they were involved with torture since before the World Trade Center attack. Because these are people from Connecticut Interbranch who are also involved with Washington and World Trade Center as investigators, people with military, stuff like that. But they're being used criminally for an influence. And relative to where we can discern it is where they are fact-keeping nature. And where they are having used our names and backgrounds and stuff. John Polda, I'm sure you look like I'm sure you're a cumbersome little coward, though. Try to speak from man to mind. You're not a doctor. Because if you're a doctor, make sure I get a response. Because there are more people involved then and now with Hartford Hospital, with the principal child abusers campus, and with threats on the kids. That's promised. There's more hurt coming on the kids. Make sure I get a motherfucking response. And you watch your dirty mind around my people when I'm talking about civil rights, with your delusions and your evidence racketeering, worse than war crimes. Watch yourself, John Paul. And you make sure I get a name who disbelieves what I said, because we're going to deal with the switching names and forging names and remote uses of black, white women judges in the Britain Superior Court and other courts involved with the females that work for them and their family members that got used with this criminally on and off those locations. And we're going to examine how people are offensively pretending passive emotions, and people are trying to interpret people by making allegations against them because the courts have been making lies about people worse than just allegations there and here with the overt criminal enterprises and with the private ones and with all the other insidious people. That's why they have their little drug cliques and all the little family members of the fire departments involved with identity thefts and frauds. Me offensively made statements around me. I don't even respond to it. That's what they recorded, making the statements and making confessions. They have their patients and criminals involved with, what led up to the World Trade Center attack in that context and sense. They should fear Mike Pence. I started using his game first. That's all rehearsed. Watch how they look. Oh, that's a little indicator. We gotta watch him now. We're like those kind of people watching. They're involved with evidence racketeering, data reception racketeering, identity reception racketeering, and with physical delusions. We're going to come hunt for them interstate now because they've been preventing mandated law. Ones with badges too, with guns. I'm going to show you what you do with the little punk cowards pretending to know me from backgrounds. You better not pretend you know me, John Padula. You want to know one of these dirty cops? You want to know these fucking cowards switching names in Weathersfield, Connecticut or Hartford, Connecticut, John Padula? Because I'll find out who you are, what you look like. I'll reveal your dirty little soul. You scumbag. So tell me I have a mental problem. You guys get me a response, motherfuckers. Or say you're sorry. You get me a motherfucking name. You get me a name for those fucking interbranch now. On fucking paper now with the fucking wire crimes. Replacing what's actually recorded. Fake audio and video with the news. Connecticut news. NBC Connecticut. I have to fucking deal with people. I have to fucking talk about personal shit on here because you guys put me in fake words with yourself and with others, motherfuckers. Fix the fake news, WFSB, on that motherfucking corner near you too. What the fuck? How many people I have to fucking speak about with you motherfuckers? They don't even know me, two motherfuckers. Like with those motherfuckers with the police report when I was growing up. Also involved with those locations next to you, WFSB. You dumb motherfuckers. Fix your fucking crimes with the phones and the motherfuckers who are speaking through the camera. And look the fuck out because you attach me to fake conversations. You have roles with attaching me to fake conversations with other media locations and the people around me. And there were also people that were in New York City right before the World Trade Center attack in relevant ways. Hear me pray. Don't fucking try to pretend you have fucking integrity. You motherfuckers who heard me if you're in the news too, motherfuckers, about with those serious subjects. Fox News, MSNBC, and CNN, I asked you many times politely. Now say sorry to Judge Napolitano too, or with them. Respond for them. Now, that's what mandated law says. You give me a fucking response. You don't switch names and take part with the shit. You don't have those rights to use the Facebook pages. Your mother's schizophrenic, John. Your fucking delusions wrought. You're a punk coward making up things about strangers on the internet with the motherfuckers switching names, interbranch switching names with their little Facebook pages. That's why the little fucking punk coward, degenerate police chief Cintron, they got his fucking daughter and him involved with this fucking punk coward and background, identity theft, fraud, slander, fake ties to me with the people tied to them. That's their confessions, motherfucker. Get them on paper too. Where the fuck is his lawyer too? That fucking lawyer personally criminally involved with them, with the fucking Peruta family too, a Russian family. Russia, watch the fuck out. Weathersfield police chief, that's a sick motherfucker. Get the fuck out of here. Because these motherfuckers brought themselves up. Yeah, John Puddle, you know the principal sex offender, motherfucker? Because that's what motherfuckers like you have been involved with that shit. See how they had those girls with the Olympics? They wouldn't let them tell. Whole bunch of motherfuckers like you spreading shit and pretending you know motherfuckers. You little identity theft motherfucker. You little identity theft fraud punk motherfucker. You like child sex offenders. I know you do, motherfucker. You like the drugs and medicine crimes I caught those fucking doctors and you with making shit up and with your physical delusion, fake fucking ties to me, my punk motherfucker. I'll show you what to do with these motherfuckers and then the intelligence community at the locations where they fucking live. Oh, I heard him on internet. He was speaking about you guys. You fucking coward! Get on paper, Interbranch. Make sure you fucking apologize to the judges. I'm sure they don't want anything to do with that. I knew they wouldn't fucking plot with you motherfuckers. You should fear the fucking God, John Padula. See what a fake motherfucking men we have. That's why you're lying to the women. That's why they have the white and black women being fucking lied to in the courts. Women judges even. Fucking disgusting fucking pigs. Now you have fucking not the women judges, the fake men with them. So John Padula is involved making up things with people on the reported to the sex offender list. I'll show you. I'll show you the guy involved on the sex offender list. One of them. There are a bunch of them. So this John Padula. Now, I never read this article. I didn't have time to read this article, but this is one of them. This is one of the guy John Padula makes things up. Hey, here it is. This is one of the things John Padula makes things up with. Oh, too many. Oh, let me see this. This is too big, this link. I don't know how to shorten that link. Let me find a shorter one. Let's see if this link fits. This is the principal child abuser. There's biblical articles about that. So there, in other words, there are other people on the child sex offender registry, and they were making up fake child predator maps and spreading lies with the people on the child sex offender map, because they're involved with interbranch families and with courts tied to them. I've recorded involved with their crimes with their patients and criminals before they got caught, and the body dumping spots associated with that. So John Padula has roles. I'm not going to even repeat what he said. It's the YouTube thing here, but he's got roles with people on the sex offender registry, spreading evidence, racketeering with these people. These people go on Facebook and they pretend passions and emotion about what other people say on a mass scale, in collusion with those nutbags with the 9/11 or January 6th treatments. All those people were there for different reasons. Season's turn. Yeah. So now I have mandated law, I rule. Because you all fools. You can't do your job. I'll try. So in other words, these people have been, they see you. I use a little bit of sarcasm and energy for my people. Again, remember, understand, a lot of people want me to speak for the people in those housing projects there. Exactly the way I am, and harder. But see, they want me to go harder. That's what they're going to be telling. That's what they're going to tell Sepp in the cartoons too. They want him to go harder, but boy, he can't go harder because everyone's playing these games. You guys aren't letting me get the mandated law. You guys aren't letting me get through the names forging and switching and the identity theft, fraud, slanders. All these people fake on here. You know, I mean, now you guys, I don't know who you, like John Padula, fake, spreading lies with child sex offenders. on the sex offender registry. It's John Padula. Oh, where you live, John Padula? You don't have my name in your, because a whole bunch of people have my name. That's what they do. They pretend to know. Oh, we're just trying to get with your sensibility because that's our job. They can't think. They can't think. Have you seen them on every channel? Please follow mandated law, Fox News, please. CNN, MSNBC. Connecticut Interbranch has been forging and switching names, preventing me writing for years now. Increasingly, they've been stacking predicate acts and fake things in databases, wrongdoing, and worse, to hide that. Hide from what is actually recorded. So election methods, election location, Wethersfield town offices is a whole bunch of ways involved with this intercities through time, criminally involved. Right where George Washington had to leave slavery, you have these sick fake punks involved overtly with the same natures of organized crime, identity thefts and frauds, slanders, tortures, and slavery. This is worse than extortion. You know, these are people that work for Sandy Hook too, Newtown. Same ones involved. Well, there's other stuff with their patients and criminals too. There's a prison there, and there's a fire department there. Involved further with people with the schools and with the Connecticut schools, and interstates, and with the school board of Wethersfield further has roles then and now with superintendent, other people with the schools and policing of the schools further involved with upskirt, thousands of upskirt. I couldn't fit the good article about the upskirt nature principle, and so they have digital crime methods too with the doctors and judges tied to them, involved with psychology. People pretending that people that are complaining about real acts and things have schizophrenia. You have some sick motherfuckers on Facebook and on Reddit. The Reddit page, the child abuser Reddit subsection of Reddit. See, they have these places only responding to types of crimes where they have uses of the juxtaposed natures of crimes originally still. They never stopped. There's remote uses of roles used remotely. Needed to hide, find active progressive lies as styles of liars. Here, New York City, gang. They don't want you to have a voice. Vaccines, rejoice. We have the means. One way redeemed. So you will discern the increasing value of the simultaneous and of the hyper simultaneous. It will increasingly get hot. And while so cold, like boxing, be told, we will be guided by the warm. Should only feel like games, but not to them, because the people in the thing. We want to call you guys out. We're not going to be judged. With these people, he doesn't get along. The algorithm should sense that, we want fake people to be called out. I mean, I just called out to examine. They have fake premises, and they're using physical delusions and psychiatry's terms, especially if this guy's a doctor. Look at his nature, John Padula, when he's jumping into other people's talking about serious things like slavery and child abuse in real instances. Here. Okay, thank you, buddy. Thank everybody. Have a great night. Unless someone's still here. No one's here. Thank you.